Okay, for those of you returning, welcome back, and for those of you that are new here, that have just stumbled upon this video, then thank you for joining me. Here is my spoiler-free review of The Gorge, a science fiction, action, horror romance directed by Scott Derrickson and written by a Zach Dean, and it's currently streaming on Apple. Now, I just want to get this out of the way. I'm not a massive fan of streaming, especially when it comes to movies. And, you know, this is going to be another video for another time. But I can't remember the last time I actually watched a film on a streaming platform. I'm just not a big fan of having these movies launch solely on these platforms. They belong on the big screen, but like I said, look, that's a conversation, a discussion for another time. So when it comes to the story of The Gorge, we follow two highly trained operatives who become close after being sent to protect opposite sides of a mysterious gorge. When the creatures start to emerge, they must work together to survive what lies within. So, The Gorge, it has a very strong setup. I think the first half of this movie for me is definitely the strongest, and it did a really good job at immersing me into this story with these characters, wrapping me up into these characters' journeys. And a lot of that is aided by the performances from Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy. I really liked how they brought their characters to life, and the chemistry between these two characters, these two actors, is great. It really sort of helps sell the romance that blossoms as the story progresses, and so it ends up feeling quite natural and not forced when you get these two characters who sort of lock eyes on each other, and you know they've put into the situation, and it all just sort of feels organic, and a lot of that is aided by how they are bringing the characters to life and the chemistry between them. And it's within the first, say, two acts, or the first half of this movie, it really kept me on my toes during the first half. And, you know, you've got these different blends of genres right throughout the movie, whether it be romance, action, horror, science fiction. And it's done very well. Again, it kind of feels very natural. And in that, like I said, in that first half, it does a really good job at keeping me on my toes. You know, they do a really good job at wrapping me up into this story with these two characters. It's intriguing, it's mysterious, and there's a charm to it. And again, I just feel like this is all aided by our two performances from our two main actors, Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy. I think the reason why it works when it comes to putting me on my toes, mainly for that first half of the movie, is because you do have this kind of sharp contrast between the romantic side of the story, where you've almost got this kind of very colourful sort of love story blossoming in front of you between these two characters, and then you've got the kind of the mystery and the horror of what's lurking within the gorge. And you kind of sense that sort of contrast, and as a result, it does a good job at sort of really putting me anyway, kind of creating that kind of very uneasy feeling of, right, you've got this kind of very charming, but, you know, romance evolving you between these two characters, but then you've kind of got that kind of entity or that kind of presence lurking below, and you can always kind of feel that. And they do that very well. But unfortunately, when it really does come to the horror, and sort of when the horror does really start to evolve, and sort of the secrets of what lies within sort of start to stick their head out, you could say, that's when the movie started to really kind of buckle for me. I just felt like when it came to the horror, it was lacking a suspense. It was lacking tension. And a lot of that will, well, what I've just said here will lead me into the sort of the major gripes that I did have with this movie that resulted in the horror really not working for me. And one of those being is what I felt like was the overuse of CGI here. I felt like at times, especially during the third act when we got our two characters inside the gorge, it just felt like, it just looked like I was watching two actors in front of green screen or blue screen. It kind of took me back to movies from the early 2000s, like Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow with Jude Law. It reminded me of movies like that, and as a result, it kind of took away from the weight and sort of the emotional punch and kind of that kind of very human aspect of its story. It just sort of really diminished that. And even though those elements are there, I think as the movie evolves and we sort of delve more into sort of the world within the Gorge with these two characters, everything they did a really good job at sort of setting up in the first act just sort of starts to unravel, because we end up in territory as well, which I felt was very familiar and paint by the numbers. So we start off very strong, where I feel like we've got something very different, original, charming, intriguing, and it's like you're with these characters, and again, a lot of that is aided by the strong performances from Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy. But as the story sort of unfolds and we end up within the Gorge and we've got the sort of the horror element of its story, that's when it kind of loses its steam and its momentum and its intrigue and its charm, you could say, and sort of what it was they were doing, which I felt was quite different. And we just end up in a place where it's very familiar, very paint by the numbers. In fact, a lot of the moments within the third act, for me, and I mean, I suppose throughout the entire experience in certain moments, it sometimes felt like I was watching a video game. Like, they got to get to point A to point B to point C, and that was sort of more evident within the third act when we're actually within the Gorge. And the world within the Gorge, like, I'm not gonna, this is a spoiler-free review, so I'm not gonna give away any of the movie's secrets. I do like what they do with the creatures. I do like the origin of the creatures. And I loved the design of the world, the aesthetic, the atmosphere that's created through the colours. Yes, there's perhaps an overuse of CGI, and there is an attempt at using practical effects, which I really, really appreciated. But again, I just couldn't sort of, I just couldn't not see the green screen. I just could not see it. Like, it was clearly there, and I just felt like as a result then it was sort of lacking the weight that I felt like it really needed, the sort of the groundedness, really. But I did really sort of like the look of the movie from a visual perspective, you know, when it comes to the design of the world, the horror, the creatures, and sort of how certain shots are composited and sort of certain sort of angles and all of that. I just found it to be very appealing, but really kind of lacked the weight. It ended up becoming an experience that felt very weightless, and we've sort of been here before. It becomes very evident in the third act, and as you sort of reach the movie's conclusion, that it just really truly fails to go anywhere different and creative with what it was sort of delving into. Like I said, going back to how I liked sort of the reasoning behind these creatures within the Gorge and sort of the reasons why, you know, these two characters are there. I really like that, but it just really truly fails to go anywhere with those ideas to land a punch, to sort of put you, the viewer, or me anyway, personally, into an experience that truly kind of felt different, that sort of has an impact and feels like, yeah, okay, it might be a little bit familiar, but it's also very different. It kind of really truly fails to do that. But like I said, due to sort of how a lot of these moments are composited, you know, with how certain scenes are framed, and from a design perspective, I found it really appealing. I really sort of appreciated what was being brought to life from a design perspective, from a visual perspective. But what was very sort of successfully brought to life within the first half of this movie when it comes to our two main characters, unfortunately that kind of gets lost. These characters' journeys and sort of their story with what they are on and what they are sort of struggling with internally, that just kind of gets lost during that third act as well, and it's unfortunate. But I always remained within the experience. I didn't once sort of check out. I quite enjoyed this movie. I liked what they were doing, and I do recommend it. And I do honestly think it does a good job at blending these different genres. But when it comes to the character stories, and sort of where we end up by the story's conclusion, the film's conclusion, it kind of just lacked a punch. That's the only way I can explain it. Oh, also, one of the major highlights for me within this movie was the score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. They seem to be doing a lot these days. I'm a massive fan of them as composers. I'm a big Nine Inch Nails fan, and again, this is one of those experiences where you can really sort of sense the Nine Inch Nails sound within the soundtrack, and I really dug it. It really does a good job at bringing sort of not just the romantic side of the story, but the horror element of it alive as well. And yeah, a great score again from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross here. So yeah, they are my thoughts on The Gorge. It's currently streaming on Apple Plus. Again, I think movies anyway, I mean, you know, call me old-fashioned perhaps, right? But films, they belong on the big screen. And there's just something very soulless and sort of weightless when it comes to just releasing movies on these platforms. I'm sorry. And it kind of shows a lot of the time in sort of the quality and sort of how they look. And I don't know whether that's just because of the way in which these streaming platforms now are churning out these movies as well. It kind of is taken away from sort of the overall impact of what it's like to sort of experience a film, a cinema, an experience like this. You know, for me, the streaming sort of side of things, the streaming platforms are really kind of diminishing that. And it will always frustrate me that we get movies like this, like The Gorge, and they just don't get released in the cinema, you know, on the big screen like they deserve to be. There's so much work, there's so much talent, there's so much passion and love that goes on behind crafting these worlds and these stories and these characters. And the release is just on whatever size screen you've got. It could be as small as a mobile phone, and it's fucking heartbreaking. And it needs to be displayed, showcased on the biggest screen possible with the best sound possible. But like I said, look, I'm sort of going off on a tangent here now. That's another video for another time. But I do recommend The Gorge. Some of you may enjoy it or love it more than I did. Some of you might go, oh, that was pretty shit. I don't know. But for me, I liked it. I had a good time with this movie. Unfortunately, it does buckle, and kind of what they do is such a great job at achieving within the first half sort of unravels as the movie approaches its third act and into its conclusion. But I appreciated what they were doing. I liked what they were doing. I liked a lot of the ideas, and visually, I think from certain moments, I found very appealing. It was a good experience. I liked it. And I would have loved to have seen this on the big screen. But yeah, look, enough rambling on from me. They are my thoughts on The Gorge, and I will be giving The Gorge my thoughts on The Gorge. But what do you guys think? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you agree or disagree with anything I've said? And please let me know in the comments below, and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, if you're one of those viewers that are new here, that just stumbled upon this video and have actually made it this far and would like to watch future movie reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. My next movie review will be for The Monkey. And just another big thank you to all of those that are subscribing, that are connecting to the channel. It means an awful lot to me. I'm hoping to hit 500 subscribers soon. And for those of you that, that are subscribed already and enjoy my content or enjoy sort of watching me ramble on about film, then please share my videos, and hopefully, there will be others out there who can connect with me on this journey that I'm on here with this channel, and sort of just sharing my passion for film with like-minded people. Like, it will always, and I say this so many times now, but it will always overwhelm me that so many of you already do want to follow just some random Welsh geek ramble on about movie, but it means an awful lot. I absolutely love doing this, and I'm really looking forward to growing my channel and evolving my channel over the years. So yeah, and remember, if there's anything you want to see from me in regards to videos, in regards to what it is you might want me to talk about, for example streaming platforms maybe, like I just touched on in this review, let me know in the comments. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, I really do appreciate it, and I'll be catching you guys soon.